Number 18 of 2024 came into effect. This was following having been passed on October 29th, 2024 by Botswana's National Assembly Parliament. Now, the Act repeals the 2018 Data Protection Act, which has been in transition since 2021, and it is aimed at strengthening the whole landscape of Botswana's data protection framework. This is hoping to be expanding the powers of the Information and Data Protection Commission, and also imposing additional obligations on data controllers and data processors. Now, these amendments to the Act have overarching implications for data controllers, for also data processors, both within Botswana and beyond our borders, necessitating the implementation of new measures to achieve compliance. But what implications will this new form of the Act have on the media landscape? Will it have any impact on media freedoms? Right. This is what we're looking at this morning. So we indulge Mr. Joel Konopo from the Botswana Editors Forum, and also Mr. Botswana Chairperson, Mr. Thomas Nkhoma, to deliberate on this one. A very good morning to you, gentlemen. Let me welcome you and thank you for your time coming through this morning.
Thank you very much.
Right. So I would think from the top of my head that it's going to be a very delicate balance between journalistic duty and protections of privacy. This is concerning the Data Protection Act. Let me just take from you representing media at the different entities or the different forums as you do, what your understanding is as the function of this instrument, the Data Protection Act. Let me start with MISA.
Thank you very much for having us. First of all, let me acknowledge that this is a very good act, and it protects, basically it protects data, information about, personal information about people. And we must acknowledge that we need that protection, because you cannot be having information, our information lying anywhere, everywhere, people accessing it willy-nilly. So we need that protection, that we need have safeguards for information, that it cannot be misused or abused by other people. Okay. So it's a very good piece of legislation that will benefit a lot of individuals.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm talking about protect information by law. Doesn't that make you nervous? It does. When it comes to journalistic duty?
It does. It undermines access to information, or it will create a tension with access to information. How will that tension be? Maybe public right to freedom of expression need to be safeguarded, because we also, as journalists, like Nkhoma will, it is important to protect public information and private information. That needs to be protected. As journalists, we have an obligation to comply with the Act. But having said that, we should also say there would be challenges somewhere as we go along, maybe the monitoring and the implementation. The subjects, which is Botswana, they have a right to data protection, like Nkhoma.
Yeah.
Journalists also have a right to access information. And also there is the law that promotes freedom of expression. So those needs to be really balanced, but we will see how it goes, and because the detail will show as we go along. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Because the Act, therefore, for what I understand, mandates that any entity that gets to handle for whatever purpose gets to handle or process data must operate within certain parameters that are stipulated by the Act. Would this what we see now in the new Act? Do we see anywhere where there could be provisions or exceptions that would accommodate the function of journalistic duty?
Actually, there are a number of sections that I think somehow they would hinder the work of the journalist, especially Section 28, lawfulness of processing. This section stipulates that personal data must be processed lawfully, fairly, and transparently. And for journalists obtaining such that data, you need consent from the data subject itself. Yeah. So imagine an investigative journalist trying to get information from somewhere, and they need to get consent from the data subject. That's very difficult because the data subject is not going to accept, not going to give the journalist that information, or is not going to accede to that request, because maybe they may be protecting themselves or protecting something. So if you need to get permission as an investigative journalist, it's going to be difficult. It's going to make your job very difficult. And also Section 29, collection of data from third parties. They also need to get consent from the data subject. And once you do that...
This is the information that has been published.
Yes.
So you still have to go back to the data subject.
Yes, and anonymous sources.
Okay. It's
going to make it very difficult for anonymous sources to give you that information as a journalist. So it's very difficult.
Yes, because when it comes through through Parliament, it passes as an act. This is now these protection stipulations are a right of the data subject. But do we not see anywhere in the Act where there's some sort of leeway to exempt, if I could call it that, exempt or make provisions for journalistic duty and otherwise?
I was going to say in other jurisdictions, like in the UK and EU, there is something called journalism exemption, where there is a clear public interest to publish information on Joel Konopo. You need to be given a leeway to publish. We don't see that, and that is the gap that maybe needs to be filled, really. So we strongly, as investigative journalists like Nkhoma Abua, we believe that the restrictions sometimes need to be understood at the level where there is also a public interest. If the public interest overrides your right as an individual, who does the balancing act in that case? It
gets tricky for me, this word public interest. I don't know if we would be using it interchangeably as in the interest of the public, because public interest, I could be interested in knowing your information for malicious intent, but oftentimes it is qualified by using interest of public. But does this stand as public interest?
In this case, clearly public interest, not interest of the public.
Because the public may be interested in something that is not of public interest.
Yes.
So it has to be, there has to be that distinction that there is public interest and something is done in the public interest. Because sometimes interest are...
sometimes we're interested in the very bad news about a subject, and that doesn't make it in the interest of society generally. I want to talk to how in the years as Botswana media landscape has been battling with legal framework and policy framework, you know, a subject that has come up a lot is that perhaps if the media itself could also assist by way of self-regulation. You know, it would also serve to make the government more comfortable with affording access and other responsibilities to media and not restricting them by law. So when it comes to data protection, perhaps what measures would you suggest could be put in place from within the media itself, you know, to still put the privacy concern at the forefront?
I think foremost, and what is important for the media is ethics. We need to abide by our ethics as journalists. We also need high professional standards. And when we have the Access to Information Act, I think it will guide how to access such information. It will create that balance.
How far along?
Because when, I'm not sure, maybe it's coming in the next parliament. And we also need to understand information classification. If you classify information according to its categories, top secret, confidential, public information, you understand how to access that information. There will be people who know how to use that information. That's a very important thing that also government needs to understand, that they need to have information classification, so that when people access information, you know, this information can be accessed by so and so, this one cannot be accessed by so and so. That will also help. Okay.
You want to weigh in on that, Mr. Ed?
For me, I would say, as journalists, we have done a lot to ensure that we are self-regulating. But the challenges that Nkhoma is raising are, if you don't have access to information, you've got extreme limitations. I'll give you an example. There are places right now where you are legally qualified as a journalist to go access information without the need for consent that is repeated by the Act. Like, to find it should be legal for me to walk into the Register of Deeds and ask about your plot. It should be, I don't need to come to you. But I can't go ask about your contacts Mascom. That's private. But normally, people who sit in the offices, they will always make their decision to say, no, even stuff that you need to get, like court records, they would say, no, go ask the person that is involved.
Yeah.
So I think government or public officers should also inform themselves clearly with the gray areas within the law, so that they don't now classify everything as public or private information.
Well, why I see you coming in is that the Act, at least the 2018 is one that I've had tie with. Actually, there are clauses in there that stipulate, that mandate public education. That mandate that we'll talk about the commission in a bit, that mandate that the commission has a responsibility, a duty of educating the public, informing the data subjects on their right around this, informing whoever entity is going to be using data or needing to use data for the functions that they offer. How much of this have we seen? Awareness campaign, awareness outreach, have we seen?
Yes, I think there has been some attempt to embark on public education. As MISA, Botswana, we've also worked with the Data Protection Commissioner to educate journalists, to educate public officers. I think we have had 2 workshops so far last year. So it was something that was going to be continuing for some time. So I think these are some attempt to educate the public, to educate public officers and other stakeholders.
There's also been suggestion, I don't know if it's stipulated in the Act, I can't ascertain that, for a data protection officer in every entity that is going to be requiring to process or use data. Do we see that in the media space? Is that in place yet, or is the interest in that sort of thing?
There is a lot of interest in ensuring that there is a data protection officer to ensure that we are aligned with what the law says. Because if you understand what the law requires, somebody should be sitting in an office to be interpreting that for you on a daily basis and working with the changes that will be happening on regular basis.
And I suppose when it comes to accuracy protection, that's why we have editors and we have a whole function of editing.
It's something very interesting, but at the same time we have, our media is very, they don't have money. They don't have funds to carry out some of these things. And one of the requirements in the data protection is that they should have data protection impact assessments. And how many media houses can do that because they don't have money? So it's something that is going to be very difficult for the media, although we have that interest to also comply and align with the law.
Where do we suggest the win then?
I think just sorry for interruption, just to add, what we would do when the time comes is for MISA and Editors Forum to say, maybe we should assist by finding a way of bringing in our efforts and resources to say, this is the contact person for now. Will that suffice? If it does, then we will develop as we go along. Because it looks like, yes, we are operating on shoestring budgets. Maybe we need to find a way.
An age-old challenge in this industry. We are finding that, Mr. Editor will perhaps will take this one. We are finding that we are battling in society, in today's society, with the advent of I don't want to say unregulated, but informal media entities that perhaps don't comply with the ethics, as Mr. Nkhoma mentioned, of journalistic duty. So how do we suggest then journalists or journalistic duty then will ensure a transparency, a fairness, and a respect still for certain rights, while still being able to disseminate the function of disseminating information? What are the suggestions that you would forward?
It's a big challenge. You're talking about maybe the match. I would just say, yes, there are new mushrooming, mostly on social media, players who really need to help us as MISA and Editors Forum to really comply with the Act. And most of the time you can see the challenge. Even before the Act is in place, we have our own challenges in that space. So it's going to be a battle to try to really bring everybody together to ensure that we comply with the law.
Yeah, but we do realize that the function of media in a democracy is a vital one. If it is going to be a functional democracy, the media has to be vibrant, or at least.
Exactly.
What do you suggest?
Yes, I think the internet has opened up the space, and we need also as society to have these media literacy workshops whereby people are educated about how the media functions, how to avoid fake news, how to identify fake news. I've written a lot of articles about disinformation and misinformation, trying to educate the public about these issues of disinformation and misinformation. We have also had a consultative forum with the Minister for State President, whereby we discuss these issues so that government can also help. And maybe something that we have also raised, that media also need a media funding, whereby we can help the media how to run their houses, how to have training funds, so that all these other people are trained on how to abide by ethics, to uphold high professional standards. So it's something that we are working on as MISA and Editors Forum, and the government on the other side. Okay.
What do we understand is in place as regards the implementation of this this Act? Back in 2018, I think it was discussed and also stipulated that a commission would be the oversight entity for this. There was also mention of a tribunal then that would be put in place, because if it is a right protected by law, there are penalties for breaching do you know what it stipulates. What do we understand is in place so far?
So far, I think they're still trying to establish themselves, and it is also stipulated in the law that they should have a commission that will be overseeing this as an overall authority that will be overseeing the implementation of this Act. And as MISA, Botswana and the region, we have also made some comments on it, that it's a very welcome initiative, that it has to, as they implement the Act, they have to make sure that it's being implemented, and there's monitoring, like Joel was saying. Yes. Okay.
And when we're talking about the advent of us advancing our economy, our society generally, to put in some of these measures in place, we're not reinventing the wheel. I mean, some countries are way ahead of us in putting in place these data protection laws and acts. Maybe let me also ask you to speak to the delicateness or the sensitivity of data in today's society. Why perhaps such an instrument would be necessary for any country, for us?
Data, the biggest importance is that data can be turned into a national security issue, it can be turned into a revenue issue, it can be turned into anything that
security
you want.
Issue?
It's a serious security issue.
Yeah.
So it needs to be protected, and there is no dispute right there. So if I have your information, I should not willy-nilly share it with members of the public or even third parties. So I think it is important to help you as an individual, as a private member of the public, to know that the custodians of your data are responsible.
Right.
Beyond that, now there's a law that really actually protects you.
Yeah.
So we are saying, as journalists, we think that feeds into our code of conduct, really, where we want information to be treated with respect and people's information to be treated well. But we are saying, let's have conversations around when same information needs to be shared with members of the public, when it is necessary and when it is responsible. So who can share that information? Journalists have been doing that forever.
Yeah.
They should be allowed to have that exemption of sharing that information responsibly.
Responsibly is the big one, because the code of conduct in and of itself really could be breached, you know,
Exactly.
and without punity, which is the concern now, hence the Act, which has penalties that are very clearly in Act. But do you see the potential risk that the Act could perhaps be used or misused to suppress these liberties
I think so,
of expression?
Especially the penalties that are spelled out. It could be used to suppress release of information. Even there is Section 32 of data subjects' individual rights to access their personal data, or to request corrections or deletion of their data, or object data processing.
Yeah, because I can say delete that information about me that you got.
Exactly.
Right.
So that has a chilling effect on investigative journalism, because you won't be able to use that information if there is that right of an individual to say delete that data.
Right.
I don't want you to use it.
Let's talk about that also from the angle of the editors forum. But what is in place to at least ensure ethical practice when it comes to investigative journalism? How much of investigative journalism are we actually practicing, and what do we have in place to ensure a fair practice?
Yes, we have MISA, we have editors forum as journalists. We have the press council, though it is at a stage where it needs to be really tried to be helped to grow. Those have been the entities that really guide us as journalists. We now have the online, and there is an association, online media. If you bring them together, we also have government, and we also follow the constitution. If you bring all those together, we have, as journalists, been trying by all means to, as investigative journalists, we've been trying by all means to really try to give people an opportunity to reply, because if you try to write about people and not give them a chance to respond, you are just sending fake news, or you're just violating their rights. Power. You're abusing them, actually.
Right, yeah. Okay, I want to close it off, but let me close it off with taking it from the media landscape. What it is that you suggest? Let's put it like that. What do you suggest are practical steps that can go into place in the immediate term now that the Act is out?
It's a very difficult.
If I can start,
yeah, please.
Okay. Yes.
I would suggest the same energy should be used by Parliament to come up with access to information law, because they can work together. You are giving one but taking the other, and journalists can succeed in what they are doing if you give them both. To say there's the Whistleblowers Act, there's access to information law, now there's data protection law. Really, you have a chance now to do your best as journalists, and I believe without access to information law, I think Nkhoma started noting that our work is going to remain difficult, and the tension is going to remain. Yeah.
This remains a sticking point then. In under 1 minute, Nkhoma.
Yes, I agree with what Joel is saying, that we need that Access to Information Act. We were promised the Act last year, and we are still waiting and want it. Now is the time to have it.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you both for coming through. Have yourself a good day. What we're discussing here from the Editors Forum, the view from MISA Botswana view is the balance that then is presented by Botswana, having on the 14th of January 2025 put in place the Botswana Data Protection Act. I think it's, I'll call it number 2, number 18 of 2024, which is the second refreshment of the Data Protection Act. It was passed in the last Parliament, October 29th, 2024, and the Act repealed the 2018 one. But the balance is the protection of the right to data privacy of data subject is the concern here. But then also there is the journalistic duty of dissemination of information to the interest of the public, and perhaps where Botswana is that can find, where Botswana can find balance therein.